everybody, good afternoon. This is Jean here, Jean Truelove from Truelove Quilts for You, and I'm with my husband Ian, engineer Ian today. One of the last videos I put up was of Jen and I, my friend Jen came. We were filming in our foyer here, and this is just a little aside, but something that quite a few people were asking, how in the world did you do that? And as you can see behind me, we have our, we live in a house that's about 120 years old, and the front door right here is, has two side lights and a fairly wide old oak door here with the leaded glass lights over here. Our house, as I was saying in my previous video, this house is toasty warm. However, this is a very large area. There's a window right here, big window, and sometimes the door gets a little bit drafty, as you know, and we've had well below freezing temperatures. So I had said to my husband, is there any way that we can put a blanket up at the door to block the drafts or something, a drop cloth, anything? And he said, how about a quilt? I said, super. My idea, of course, would be very simple. Put a quilt or a blanket on rings, and every time you have to open the door, you have to push the quilt up aside on the rings. A little bit difficult when you're outside coming in. So Ian, engineer that he is, as you know, he's a builder, do-it-yourself extraordinaire. He builds everything. He took the time to figure out, let me just pull this down, how we have put this quilt, one of my quilts that I had done a tutorial in my Carpenter Star, how he's done the quilt onto the door, and as you can see, when the door opens, when the door opens, the entire quilt opens with it.
On a special hinge.
On a hinge. And Ian now, I'm going to get out of the shot, Ian now is going to explain exactly how he did this quilt hanging so efficient, really, and easy to open, and it really does block our slight drafts because he had to cover the entire door plus almost all of the frame. So I'm going to take it over to Ian now, and he will explain just what he did.
After Jean's wonderful introduction there, I'll explain how the fixings actually came about. What you want to start with really is two complete curtain rods with their own brackets. That's what you need, two curtain rods. One wide one, I've got one here that's 60 inches wide, or it started off at 60, and another exactly matching rod that can be shorter. It doesn't even matter if you've got two 60-inch curtain rods, and with a hacksaw you can cut them down. If I can just open the door here and show you, I actually cheated because I didn't have two curtain rods. I made it actually out of the one. I'll explain as I go anyway. But if you can see here, the first bracket that the rod sits into, I actually extended it using a galvanized, I think they're called joining plates. Fixed it onto the rod and extended past the top of the door, the bracket to the plate first, and then onto the door. So as this solid hardwood door, we wanted to preserve it as best as possible, you put a pilot hole in first at the appropriate point into the solid wood door, and then with appropriate screws, which I have in my tool set here, fixed this bracket into the door. Now it had exactly the same about 3/4 of the way across the door. There's a reason for it to be. It's actually about 7/8 of the way across the door, and the actual rod ends on the bracket coming this way, and it overhangs the gap that the door makes onto the frame, because this is where most of the drafts, if ever, are going to come through. And of course you've got the glass, which is colder. So over here where this bracket is, it's not going to be going past, I think this is the door gap about here, the drafty door gap, because that rod mustn't extend too far. When you open the door, it forms, if you like, the hinge on the face of the quilt, and this short rod here only comes to just past the bracket, which is again away from the door. So this, as it were, the hinge can recess on itself, forming the ability for the door to open wide. Hope you can all see that. And as most real good solid wood doors are oak, as Jean said, in the original colour of wood, stained, how beautiful it all looks. And of course Jean found a fabulously complementary or complementing quilt that goes with all our decor. What's interesting also, if you can see there, I actually cheated. I didn't have a bracket. I'll call this, it's actually not a matching bracket, but that's what we had here, a bracket that matches those others. I had 3 brackets on the 60-inch curtain rod, but if you have 2 curtain rod sets, you won't have to improvise as I did there. I actually used just a galvanized angle, shelf angle there, and improvised with a bolt, nut and bolt, to make it work. But if you buy in advance 2 curtain rods, you'll have enough curtain brackets, rod brackets, to be able to improvise.
Now, can I just ask?
Yes, come.
I'm just asking, actually, how did we put the quilt up on that red sleeve?
Right.
I sewed that sleeve about 4 inches as a tube, threaded that red sleeve, just a bit of fabric, onto the rod, all the way through both rods. And then what we did is the quilt is, I had a step ladder. We actually safety pinned with large 2-inch safety pins all the way across the top of the sleeve, as it were. So the quilt, as you can see, it's not gapping, it's not drooping. It is secured from the back side of the sleeve, of the hanging sleeve, as it were, onto the quilt. So when the door opens, the quilt is attached to the red hanging sleeve there.
And if anyone copies us, just to perfect, because this was all done on the fly and in my head, Jean asked, well, how long a sleeve should I make the red material there? And I said 60 inches, but it could have done with being, say, about 66 at least. We could have extended this past, the sleeve come over here, and
the quilt be
then
attached
this would
up to the
sort of flap a little bit.
Yeah, but that's okay, because that quilt size, whatever that size is, it's a fairly largish older door, is covering, the most important thing, is covering the top gap of the frame and the 2 side gaps. That's important.
The top of the door is
there.
Here.
Yes.
So any drafts coming through are going to go up where the warm air is anyway and get nullified, and that cold face of the door and side light over here, which is glass, of course, being covered, there again, the tendency for warm air to draft as it were through the cold surface of the side light, and the half glazed door gets nullified. It gets cut down considerably, which is warming this area much better. And the bottom of the quilt almost touches the ground.
Yes, yeah, but not quite.
But not quite.
Yeah.
And again, that nullifies the cold surface and drafty gaps that exist.
Has it really made a difference?
Oh wow.
Oh my goodness. As I said, we have a warm house. We have our lovely old radiators which pump out lovely moist heat. It's nice. But this is a big room, and we would come down, and of course our upstairs is a little bit warmer, and the foyer is that much warmer. It really is, isn't it?
Yes, it
Yeah,
is.
it is.
And just an interesting historical aside, some of our boys confirmed what a story that we did here when we first bought the house. This area here in the farmland used to have a chestnut grove, or a small forest, if you like, of trees that was cut, and the builders in this area, they milled the beautiful old trees to produce the doors. So instead of oak, this is actually, I believe, is that right, Jean?
Yes,
chestnut?
that's right, yeah, it's chestnut.
It's all chestnut. All of the architraves or casings, as you call them, all of you call them baseboards, we call them skirting boards, are all milled out of the beautiful original chestnut. Beautiful hardwood. So there we have it. Anything we can add? Yes, definitely make your sleeve long. Oh yes.
Yes.
Very, very important, Jean. Remember we talked about this. Is that at the end of the winter time?
Oh yes, yeah.
When everything's getting warmer outside, if you actually have your 3+
Brackets.
curtain rod
Curtain rods,
brackets, you can just get underneath, undo the screws that come from the back to secure the rod in place. You loosen them off, and you're able to lift off the whole sleeve down onto the ground, and then roll up, not just the sleeve onto the rod, but roll up your quilt.
Yeah.
Store it away in a warm, dry place for the summertime, and get it out next winter. You just leave the brackets up.
And then just because and also somebody might say, well, I don't want to really screw into my lovely woodwork. You have to,
That's
and it's
why I showed
yeah,
you.
it's minuscule, really. It's
You just put a pilot hole
yes.
into your lovely wood, and the right size screws.
Yeah.
Screw in your
brackets.
curtain rod brackets. You may have to use spacers because you're going onto the architrave or casings all around your beautiful door and side lights, just to make it vertical when you attach in a vertical fashion your curtain rod brackets, and it all works.
Yeah. And the way I've secured the quilt, this quilt in particular, I just grabbed. If you could change it out in the winter season if you wanted, you could literally just safety pin this one and put something else up. Or if you wanted to just store it away, it's easy to do. Just roll it up, store it for the summertime. It wouldn't take very long. Yes, yeah.
While Jean safety pinned the quilt.
Yep.
Onto the sleeve.
And I had no problem safety pinning it, and I wasn't worried about safety pinning it. I know a lot of quilts you can put a hanging sleeve, but we found this just as easy. You put the sleeve over the rod, and you put the quilt or a blanket or whatever you have. You put your quilt onto the sleeve then. So there you go.
Warmer.
Yeah.
For you.
Yeah, it's lovely.
In the winter time.
Yeah. Hope you enjoyed this, folks.
And of course you've got a nice backdrop.
Yes.
Perhaps you're going to see Jean and Ian,
yes.
True Love Quilts for You, using this as a backdrop.
It's nice.
To make some of our other videos.
Yeah.
Thank you, friends and family, quilting family out there, for tuning in to us.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ian. It's lovely.